You thought your freedom is permanent just to find out you have worsened your case. In his late teens, Price began to accumulate a string of increasingly violent offenses. He was repeatedly arrested on charges ranging from domestic abuse and battery to assault with a deadly weapon. Neighbors and sources within New Orleans criminal circles described Price as volatile and aggressive. Police records, eventually made public in the wake of the jailbreak, indicate that he had been jailed on charges of simple assault, criminal damage, domestic abuse, battery, and assault with a weapon. Some reports even mention an attempted first-degree murder charge, reflecting the dark potential of his criminal activities, though the precise nature of that allegation remained unclear. Whether or not Price ultimately stood trial for a homicide, the sheer volume and severity of his alleged offenses painted him as a violent offender who spent much of the last few years behind bars or in courtrooms. He was, by the time of the breakout, a known name to prosecutors and law enforcement in New Orleans, and his reputation for brutality meant that many judged him a dangerous criminal destined to be imprisoned for a long time. By early 2025, Gary Price was confined in the Orleans Parish Justice Center, often referred to as the Orleans Parish Jail, in New Orleans, awaiting trial on those charges. The Justice Center, an aging facility at the edge of the city's 9th Ward, housed dozens of pretrial detainees and a handful of convicted inmates. Conditions there had long been criticized. Staffing shortages, budget constraints, and outdated infrastructure contributed to its notoriety. Inside the jail, Price was reportedly kept in general population along with other high-risk inmates. Sources say that he cultivated alliances with some of the jail's more notorious prisoners, men who had themselves been accused of multiple murders or other serious felonies. The disaffected inmates, including Price, were said to share a kind of nihilistic bravado, taunting guards, scribbling crude graffiti on cell walls, and even boasting that they were innocent despite the mounting charges against them. In the months leading up to the escape, rumor in the Justice Center held that Price had grown increasingly desperate. He had spent months locked in cells, far from any comforting contact, awaiting hearings on charges that carried the possibility of life imprisonment or worse. Behind bars, he chafed at the long days and the constant reminders of how precarious his future might be. According to jail records and witness statements obtained later, Price often expressed cynicism about the legal system, hinting that he felt the courts would never grant him a fair shake. Some fellow inmates, speaking anonymously, later reported that Price talked about ending this life, either by trying to escape or by taking his own, if he did not find freedom soon. These expressions of fatalism foreshadowed the dramatic gamble he would soon take. In the early hours of Friday, May 16, 2025, a cataclysmic event unfolded. Gary Price was among a group of 10 inmates who launched a meticulously planned escape from the Orleans Parish Justice Center. The breakout was bold, cinematic in its brazenness, and would instantly become the worst jail escape in the city's recent history. At around 12:20 a.m., authorities say, the inmates somehow obtained tools or improvised devices that allowed them to rip off a toilet from the wall of a single cell. Behind the toilet, they dug a tunnel through a wall into a maintenance corridor, Surveillance footage later showed a hole roughly the size of a man in the cell's rear wall, with hurried graffiti around it reading, "Too easy LOL. Catch us when you can," and "Most hated." 5 of the men, including Price, crawled through the tunnel into an adjoining hallway, while others overpowered a guard and raided control room briefly to secure more doors. Using a staff key or inside help, they flung open a supply door, one that led outside the secured area, and then scaled the perimeter wall. Still clad in their orange inmate uniforms, the escapees sprinted across a patch of ground and then, in a surreal sight, dashed across Interstate 10 under the nose of pre-dawn traffic. A startled witness later reported seeing figures in orange jump onto the highway and race into the darkness. Within minutes, they melted into the sprawling neighborhoods of New Orleans. In the tense hours that followed, discarded orange jumpsuits were found strewn across the neighborhood of Gentilly, near where they had crossed I-10. Trash of all kinds, discarded during their flight, was left behind like breadcrumbs. Police found ripped clothing, empty bottles, and even a few plastic bags containing hastily grabbed food. Each piece of evidence only underscored the desperation of the break. Gary Price was last spotted running toward the dense foliage of New Orleans east, along with at least one other inmate, a wastebasket possibly held over his head to conceal his features from dash cameras. The reaction of law enforcement was swift but chaotic. Word of the jailbreak reached the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office when routine head counts at 8:30 a.m. revealed the missing men. By mid-morning, a statewide alert had gone out. New Orleans police, state police, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, and other agencies all mobilized to hunt down the escapees. News of the breakout spread quickly through the city, prompting shock and fear in the community. "We just never expected something like this," said Romel Smith, a resident of New Orleans East, who later watched the drama unfold at his front door. Like his neighbors, he was jolted awake to a blare of sirens and helicopters. "I opened my door and saw police everywhere," Smith recalled. By Monday night, for days after the escape, the city had seen 4 of the 10 fugitives recaptured. On May 19th, as dusk settled, Louisiana State Police swarmed a residential block on Prentice Avenue. Spotting one of the young men in an alleyway behind a home, they circled and struck. The target was 21-year-old Gary Price. In a matter of seconds, he was in cuffs, face down on the pavement, hands still bound by an improvised rope from his own bedsheet. Neighbors who saw the arrest were stunned. One woman peered out her window and saw a dozen officers holding down a handcuffed man who looked no older than her son. In stunned disbelief, she murmured, "I can't believe they caught him here in my yard." Video later surfaced of Price's arrest, showing him nervously glancing around as troopers pulled him from a homemade shelter under some palmetto trees. That night, he was the 4th man returned to custody, joining 3 others who had been nabbed in the 4 days since the escape. 6 fugitives remained at large. During the manhunt, details of Price's original crimes emerged slowly. Investigative reporting revealed that on one occasion he had allegedly attacked a woman with a large knife during a domestic dispute, a case that had landed him in jail on an attempted murder charge. On another, he was accused of shattering a neighbor's front door in a drunken rage, nearly striking a passerby. But none of these incidents had resulted in a final conviction before the escape. Charged with multiple violent offenses, Price had for months been deemed a dangerous suspect. The official charge sheets indicated nothing so grave as murder, but enough allegations of bloodshed that his name sounded ominous to the public. When he bolted from custody, newspapers quickly began labeling him a murder suspect or first-degree assassin. The hyperbole grew as he eluded capture. Some commentators argued that by escaping, he had irrevocably become a threat worthy of the harshest penalty. Price, the young black man from a marginalized community, embodied the demographic overrepresented in U.S. prisons. His trajectory, from poverty to violent crime, raised questions about whether capital punishment addresses root causes or perpetuates cycles of trauma. Advocates highlighted untreated mental health issues and economic despair as factors overlooked by punitive frameworks. Subscribe to our channel to get updated daily now.